Good morning. It is 10 o'clock. Can I welcome everybody to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee, which is one of 3 area-based planning committees of Dorset Council. Our area of remit covers the previous Purbeck District Council and most of the previous East Dorset District Council areas. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor Tony Coombs and I'm the chairman of this area planning committee. If I can introduce the officers that are supporting today, we have Anna Lee, who is the Service Manager for Service Development and Enforcement in Planning. Kim Cowell is Principal Planning Officer. Pete Walters, Planning Officer. Mike Potter from Dorset Highways, and also from Dorset Highways, Patrick Carpenter, Colin Graham, and Stephen Mepham. We have Chelsea Goddard, who will be reading up the public representations. Phil Crowther is our solicitor today, and our committee support is David Northover. And I would also like to thank the officers behind the scenes who are making today's virtual meeting possible. We couldn't do it without you guys. Before I move on, I wish to just mention dispatches to members of the team. Mike Potter, who will be leaving us shortly to Pastures New, and to Colin Graham, who will be retiring shortly, and this will be his last meeting. Can I say on behalf of the committee, our heartfelt thanks to both of you for the work and the support that you've done, making our lives easier in making the decisions. So thank you both very much, and good luck with the rest of what you'll be doing in your new adventures.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So moving on, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making processes to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and council staff in accordance with the government's guidance on social distancing by applying new regulations for holding committee meetings from remote locations. At the annual meeting of Council on the 4th of May this year, it was agreed that all Council meetings that are not executive in nature would continue to be held virtually from the 7th of May until such time as social distancing requirements were removed on the 19th of July. We had hoped to be able to return to face-to-face meetings today. However, with the uncertainty caused by rising cases in Dorset, the Council has resolved to continue with virtual meetings until September. Where a decision is required, committee members will express a minded to decision in respect of the recommendations set out in the officer reports, with decisions being taken under officer delegated authority. Anna Lee, as the appropriate officer, is in attendance to enact any minded to decision this morning. This meeting is being live streamed to the public, and a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available on the website after the meeting. Public participation will take the form of written statements as opposed to public speaking. My apologies to those members of the public who had hoped to address the committee in person today. I hope you understand the reasons why. We will follow the agenda as published. So I shall now move on to apologies for absence. First of all, can I welcome Mike Barron to the committee, as this will be his first meeting, and ask that officers convey our thanks to Brian Heatley for the time he has served and for his contributions on this committee. So in order to ensure that we have everybody here, I shall do a roll call, and if you can just intimate that you are here. So Shane Bartlett, Vice Chairman.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Mike Barron.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Alex Brenton.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Robin Cook.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Mike Dyer.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Barry Gorringe.
Present, Madam Chairman.
David Morgan.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Julie Robinson.
Present, Madam Chairman.
David Took.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Bill Trite.
Present, Madam Chairman.
And John Worth.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Fantastic, a full house. Good morning to you all. Can I ask members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination? If something does become apparent during the meeting, can you let us know as soon as it becomes apparent, please? Item 4 on the agenda is to note the minutes of the meeting, which seems like a lifetime ago, on the 7th of April. Are members happy to note those minutes?
Noted, Madam Chairman.
Noted, thank you.
Noted, Madam Chairman.
Agreed, Madam Chairman.
Noted.
Thank you.
Noted.
Okay, so public participation. Members of the public have been invited to submit written representations which are limited to 450 words. The maximum number of representations accepted are 3 under each category and are accepted in strict date and time order. Members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to address the committee will be allowed to speak to the committee this morning, and we certainly have local members here, and welcome and good morning to you as well. All requests have to have been registered with Democratic Services by 1 p.m. on Tuesday the 27th of July. The deadline had been extended due to the recent decision to retain virtual meetings. David Northover, are there any representations from the public that do not relate to matters on the agenda today?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. In that case, we will move on to the planning applications. We have one planning application and one traffic regulation order before us today. Have there been any requests for deferrals or withdrawals, please?
Madam Chairman, Kim Cowell here. No, there have been no requests for withdrawals or deferrals.
Okay, thank you. The background information relating to applications before us today has been available for inspection by members prior to the meeting, and that covers consultations, objections and representations, as well as the local plans and the council's related policies. In each case, I will invite the case officer to produce their item. Members of the public, planning agents, applicants and town and parish councils have been invited to make written submissions, and these will be read out by Chelsea Gollage, who I need to say has not been involved with the merits of either of the applications before us, but only providing technical support. They will be read out in the following order: public against the application, public in support, the applicant or agent, town or parish council, and then local member. Following the public participation section of every item, I will ask officers if there are any salient points that they wish to clarify. I will then open the floor to members for questions, comment and debate. In order to run the meeting, may I request that members of the committee direct any remarks and questions through the chair, and I will invite you to speak in turn. Requests to speak need to be made via the chat facility only and not the hand raising facility. Please can you keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking, because this helps maintain audio quality. At the end of the debate, for transparency, I will take the vote by roll call. The vote will be recorded in the minutes as a recorded vote if 3 or more members make the necessary request. I will also ask members to confirm that they have heard the entire presentation and debate before they cast their vote. Oh, sorry, I've got a load of pop-ups on my screen at the moment. Due to the technology, there may be a short gap whilst we load the presentations. So moving on to agenda item 6, application 6/2019-0639. Is the outline application for up to 15 residential dwellings, site reprofiling and associated infrastructure, with all matters reserved apart from the vehicular access from West Lane at land north of West Lane, Stowborough, Wareham. And Pete Waters will be taking us through this. Morning, Pete.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I shall just present my screen to you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. This application is being presented to the Planning Committee following the schema delegation referral process, as the Service Manager for Development Management and Enforcement considers that the concerns raised by the Parish Council warrant the application being considered by the Planning Committee. This is an outline planning application for the erection of up to 15 dwellings. All matters are reserved apart from vehicular access. If I could just provide a few updates for you before I get into the main presentation. There is a slight typing error on the second subparagraph of chapter 6. The small plateau that's referred to in the report is actually situated at the southern and not the northern end of the site, and that will be significant as will become clear later in the presentation. Councillor Holloway, I believe he may be speaking later, but he's wished to clarify that in his comments he objects to lack of affordable housing, not the amount. So apologies for any confusion. I just wanted to clarify that. The government have just released a new national planning policy framework. Unfortunately, it was published not long after the agenda was published. And that means there are some changes to the report in terms of paragraph numbers, specifically all references to paragraph 172, which primarily relates to the impact on the AONB, should now refer to paragraph 176. Also in the reason for applying condition 11, there is reference to the National Planning Policy Framework, and that should read paragraph 166. I would like to point out at this point that although the paragraph numbers have changed, the assessment and recommendation remain unchanged. So by way of context, the site is situated at the western end of the village of Stowborough. Stowborough, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a village situated approximately a mile to the south of Wareham, and it sits within the parish of Arne. Coming in a bit closer, the site is situated between Hollow Oak Road and the A351. If I put the laser pointer on, this road here is the A351 Wareham and Stowborough bypass, and Hollow Oak Road is here. So the site sits outside of the settlement boundary of Stowborough, which is immediately to the east and incorporates Hollow Oak Road here. The site is approximately 160 metres as the crow flies from Bog Lane Sang, which is across here. I'll come to that in more detail later. It's worth noting that although the site is outlined in red, the applicant actually owns the larger parcel of land as outlined in blue. Also worth noting that a public right-of-way runs across the northern end of the site, which connects Stowborough to the Bog Lane Sang. So running through some photographs of the site, this is taken looking from the southern edge of the site. You've got the A351 over here behind this tree line. To the right is Hollow Oak Road, again hidden behind some well-established vegetation. Continuing on, this is looking to land beyond the site, but within the ownership of the applicant. What I wanted to show you in this slide is that the land begins to decline as you head further north, which is significant in this application. Photograph looking back south across the site. So you have the A351 beyond this tree line here again. West Lane is beyond this hedgerow here, and just off camera is Hollow Oak Road here. This photograph is taken from the site looking towards the residential properties in Hollow Oak Road, the nearest neighbouring residential properties to the site. And as it illustrates, there's a good degree of well-established screening there, although I should point out that the rear gardens of the properties in Hollow Oak Road are also a good size as well, so the properties are well set back from this site. Just a few more again, highlighting the established tree line, and again you can see the land begins to dip. This is heading further north, so we're looking to the northwest here, and you can see that the land begins to fall away there. And again, showing the degree of screening that has been established since the building of the A351 bypass about 30 years ago, I believe. Finally, this is looking again beyond the site, but land within the ownership of the applicant, again clearly showing the decrease in land levels as you head further north, and in the background you can see Wareham in the distance. This is the nearest residential property to the site. This is Meadow Cottage. It's here, so it's situated on West Lane. As you can see, again, there's a good degree of screening on this property from the site. Sorry. And then this is a Google photograph that illustrates the blank western facade of Meadow Cottage as well on West Lane. So there's no direct overlooking from that property. Moving on, just taking you on a brief tour around the site, which will become apparent as the reasons why as I work through. This is taken from the existing access of the site, looking east along West Lane into Stowborough. As you can see, there is no pavement or footway of any kind running along the land at the moment. This photograph is taken further along West Lane, heading towards the centre of the village. This is the junction with Hollow Oak Road. As you can see, when Hollow Oak Road was built, a pavement was built to the end of Hollow Oak Road, but goes no further. Part of this proposal, as I'll come on to, is to provide a pavement which would provide a pedestrian link that would lead from the proposed development all the way to Corfe Road, which is the central road running through Stowborough and where the amenities and facilities are provided. And one of the benefits of providing that pavement link is you would also link Hollow Oak Road, so we would be providing on the application site.
Peter, sorry to interrupt. You just had a blip in your feeds. You went very quiet for a minute. Do you want to just repeat the last couple of points you've made, please? Just so we make sure that everyone's heard it.
Yes, apologies. So this slide is showing the junction between Hollow Oak Road and West Lane. And the reason I'm pointing this out is you can see that when Hollow Oak Road was built, a pavement was built along Hollow Oak Road, but it doesn't continue along West Lane. As part of the proposal to mitigate highway safety concerns, a pavement would be provided along West Lane. And that provides a benefit to the residents of Hollow Oak Road as well, who would be provided with a pedestrian link, and that pavement would link to Corfe Road where the amenities and facilities are. Showing the far end of where this pavement would come out, this is the junction with Corfe Road. The village hall is situated here. The primary school for the village is behind these trees, so the pavement would provide a safe pedestrian link from the development and Hollow Oak Road to the primary school. This is the public footpath that runs to the north of the site. It leads to the Bog Lane Sang. As part of the proposal, Natural England have requested that a footpath would be put through the north of the site to connect to this existing
Peter, I'm sorry, we lost you again for a minute.
But that is fine. Hello, are you back?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay. This is a footpath running across the north end of the site. So this is linking West Lane to the Bog Lane Sang. Sorry, not West Lane, beg your pardon, Corfe Road to the Bog Lane Sang. And Natural England have requested that a public footpath would be put through the north of the site to connect to this existing footpath, which would provide a link to the Sang, encouraging residents to use it for recreational purposes. This is just showing a photograph looking from that footpath, looking across to Wareham. So we're on the northern edge of the land that's owned by the applicant, but not within the site. And as you can see, it looks across to Wareham and across the floodplain. And this is the connecting point to a footpath that crosses the road and leads to the Bog Lane Sang. There's also a pavement on the bypass, the A351, which would provide another pedestrian link, again up to the Sang. This pavement actually continues up as far as the junction with the Purbeck Centre Sports Centre in Wareham. So it's possible to walk or cycle, it's a designated cycleway, up as far as that should you wish to. This is the junction between West Lane and the A351. The pavement has come all the way down and then continues along down West Lane. And finally, we've gone full circle here. This is the pavement that was built when the A351 was constructed. As you can see, again, it begins to go along West Lane. We're looking back up towards the entrance to the site and then stops. So the introduction of a pavement would provide a continuous pedestrian link along West Lane. Just showing you a parameter plan, I should remind members that all matters are reserved other than access, so this really is indicative, but just to give a sense of what's being proposed. Particularly worth pointing out that there's likely to need to be some kind of acoustic screen, although there's a good degree of visual screening from the trees here. The acoustic screening is reasonable but probably not sufficient, and so Environmental Health are happy that details can be provided at the reserve matter stage for an acoustic screen, and this can be achieved without having any visual impact because of the degree of visual screening of the tree line. The other thing to point out is that the change in land levels would be formalised with an embankment providing a development platform on the southern end, and this is where I corrected the report where the plateau is at the southern end of the site, and as you can see now it's quite significant in terms of considering this development. Here's an indicative master plan again, just to point out that access is the only matter being considered along with the principle of development. So this is an indicative master plan, but it gives an indication of what could be achieved. And at this point, the applicant is thinking of doing something akin to what Hollow Oak Road has achieved with a linear access road going through the site with development on either side. They would provide access for agricultural vehicles onto the agricultural land to the rear as well. So moving on to the access itself, this is the proposed access. As you can see, when I showed you the photographs of the footpath that goes along West Lane from the A351, that comes along here and that would link into this. The proposed footpath going to the east of West Lane isn't shown on here yet because that will be agreed, the details will be agreed for a section 278 agreement, but the footpath will continue along here. Our highways team have been consulted on this proposed access and considered it to be acceptable. And here are the visibility displays as well, just demonstrating that it can be achieved. So moving on to considering the principle of development here. Initially, this application was received to be considered as a rural exception site with 50% affordable housing provided. The officers went for a viability process with this and initially concluded that 65% could be achieved. However, following consultation with our highways team, it was felt that in order to make the development acceptable in terms of highway safety, that the pavement would need to be provided. We then went for a viability exercise, taking into account the cost of providing that pavement, and concluded that 50% affordable housing would be achievable and not 65% as initially hoped. That would have been achieved through 47% provision on site plus a commuted sum. Officers considered that this wouldn't be compliant with policy RES of the Purbeck local plan, which allows a small amount of open market housing to facilitate a rural exception site. So it was considered that the proposal wouldn't be compliant with that policy. However, in the intervening time, the Arne neighbourhood plan has been made. It went to referendum, I believe, in May. And was made by the council in June. So the Arne neighbourhood plan now forms part of the development plan for any development within the parish of Arne, which this is. Therefore, the application can be considered against the Arne neighbourhood plan, which is what officers have done here. So before I get into assessing against the policy, I should make it clear that there is some supporting text for the policy prior to the policy being laid out, and this site is mentioned in the neighbourhood plan, and quote, the site is being strongly opposed by a significant number of residents, unquote, and that's due to the lack of a footpath and its use as an informal pick up and drop off for school children. It's worth saying at this point that that is not within the policy. The Our Neighbourhood Plan does not provide any allocated sites, and therefore it uses this policy to provide its housing, and the policy itself does not explicitly preclude the site from development. But beyond that, what we have tried to do in this proposal is address some of the concerns raised by the neighbourhood plan, specifically the lack of footpath. So that should say pavement, I should say pavement, not lack of footpath, beg your pardon. So a lack of a pavement leading to Corfe Road and to the school. So that issue has been addressed, we consider. In terms of picking up and dropping off of children, it's an informal arrangement on the highway. So there is no necessary right to park there per se, but there's no restriction on parking there. So officers do consider that although it doesn't form part of the policy, we have been mindful of what the Our Neighbourhood Plan says, and we've tried to address the concerns that it raises to make this site more suitable for development, addressing the concerns that were raised by the residents. So going from there, actually going through the policy itself, there are a number of criteria that the site has to comply with, and I will run through these fairly briefly, but of course I can go over in more detail if needed. So in terms of whether the site is within, adjoining or otherwise well related to the development boundaries, as I showed you right near the beginning of this presentation, it's adjacent to the development boundary, so it's not an isolated site in the middle of nowhere. It's not within 400 metres of protected heathland. In terms of being in keeping with the character of Arne Parish and its settlements, scale and design and layout are all reserved matters. So those are matters that will be considered at reserved matter stage, but there's no reason to think that that can't be achieved. In terms of not individually or cumulatively harming the landscape or settlement character or heritage designations, the AONB team were consulted on the proposals. They are satisfied that there's no impact on wider views within the AONB, and so satisfied with the proposal. And in terms of local impact on the settlement character, it's very similar in design to the existing Hollow Oak Road development in terms of that linear road running through the development. So there is some precedent here. Taking a full account of the potential that they will have, the effect they'll have on the neighbouring properties. Again, the layout is a reserved matter, so that is something that officers will obviously consider carefully when the reserved matters application comes in, if this application is approved by members. There's no reason to think that that harmonious relationship can't be achieved. As I showed in the photographs and on the plans, there's actually the neighbouring properties on the Hollow Oak Road have good sized gardens, and the nearest property is Meadow Cottage, which again I've shown has a blank western facade, so there'd be no risk of overlooking or being overlooked. Excuse me, sorry. And again is well screened as well. So in terms of national guidance to not be at risk of flooding, I will come on to this in more detail, but we have addressed that. The site doesn't exceed 15 dwellings on any site at Stowborough, at or adjoining Stowborough, beg your pardon. Significantly, the Our Neighbourhood Plan requires that the homes would be occupied only as a principal residence. We have introduced a condition to that effect, and I'm aware of the history behind the Purbeck local plan, the emerging one, and the second homes policy. And the difference here is that this isn't a made neighbourhood plan that has gone through examination. It's gone through referendum, and it has been made by the council. So this, in officers' opinion, carries significantly more weight because it's been through that process already, and so therefore, in this instance, it's considered reasonable to apply this condition in order to be compliant with Policy 4. Whereas the Purbeck local plan is still going through the examination process and at the main modification stage, and therefore doesn't carry the same weight that the Our Neighbourhood Plan does. Moving on to the mix of sizes of homes in line with Policy 1, I will come on to this in a minute, just to say that our housing needs officer is happy with the mix of affordable homes, and there's a mix of sizes of homes which is compliant with Policy 1. Policy 1 requires that there's a provision of some 2-bed homes to meet an ageing population, which there are in this development. Finally, for this policy, the effects of the proposed homes individually and in combination with other developments on European sites. That Natural England have been consulted on the proposal. They are satisfied that both through contribution from the community infrastructure levy towards heathlands mitigation and through a connection to the footpath to the Bog Lane Sang, that the impact on heathlands will be suitably mitigated. An appropriate assessment has been undertaken as well to ensure that there isn't undue harm to the Poole Harbour recreational area SPD and also in terms of nitrates and phosphates. So officers do consider that this proposal is in line with policy 4 of the Arne Neighbourhood Plan. Moving to the housing provision, as you can see, in terms of affordable housing, what we have here are 7 units proposed, of which 4 would be 1-bedroom flats. You'd have 2 2-bedroom houses, a 3-bedroom house. And in terms of open market, as I said previously, we have 2 2-bedroom houses and then 4 3-bedroom houses as well as 2 4-bedroom houses. There is also a commuter sum to be paid. So although there isn't 50% affordable housing on the site, once the commuter sum is taken into account, that totals 50%. Just moving on to discuss the Sang. Apologies for the slightly crude drawing with my non-artistic computer skills here, but just to make it clear the relationship to the application site in the Bog Lane Sang. So here the application site is over here. The Sang is quite a substantial one. It starts from here, comes all the way around and down. The car park, if you're going towards it, is here, but obviously we would be encouraging people to walk, which is why there's a condition seeking a footpath link to the existing footpath to encourage residents to walk to the Sang, which, as you can see, is perfectly achievable. Again, slightly crudely drawn, and apologies, but this is just to show there are 2 ways of accessing that Sang. The crossing point is here, and there's a footpath that leads into the Sang, which starts here. And then you can either come along the existing pavement, or following excuse me, following the planning condition, there will be a footpath, details of which are to be provided. So I have just taken what would seem to be a logical route along the hedge line to ensure that the agricultural land can continue to be used. And it's worth noting that the distances there are roughly equidistant, about 240 metres, leading to the same point of crossing across to the Sang. Again, just showing where the pavement provision would go. It would link all the way up to the existing pavement here. As I've shown in the photographs, at present that pavement link isn't there, and so as well as mitigating the potential harm to highway safety from this development, it would also provide public benefit for the residents of Hollow Oak Road as well, providing them with a safe pedestrian link up to the school and onto amenities as well. The pavement will be secured through a planning condition and then delivered through a Section 278 agreement. And I have consulted with the Highways Authority, who have confirmed that the land forms highways land, so this is deliverable. Moving on to the flood risk, this is something that has been mentioned by a couple of neighbours. The site is not within flood risk zones 2 or 3. This kind of tallies up with what you can see in the photographs where the land begins to decline towards the northern end of the site. So the purple here denotes flood risks 2 and 3. The Environment Agency are undertaking an exercise at the moment where they are updating their data. They have advised me that they do not consider it likely that the update to the data is going to bring the site within the flood risk zones. However, in order to err on the side of caution, they've requested that a revised flood risk assessment will be submitted with the Reserve Matters application, and I've discussed with the applicant, who is happy to do so. There are no protected trees on the site. However, there is a protected tree in the neighbouring property here, and so our tree officers have requested that a full arboricultural method statement would be submitted, but this can be achieved by condition. There's no reason to think that that tree can't be adequately protected as long as the correct measures are taken. So in summary then, the principle of development is considered to be compliant with policy for small sites of the Arm Neighbourhood Plan. Access is being considered at this point, and the highways team are satisfied with the access arrangement and visibility displays. In terms of general highway safety, subject to the provision of the pavement, they're satisfied that the impact on highway safety will not be harmful. The impact on the AONB I've briefly discussed. The AONB team is satisfied that there's no harmful impact on wider views in the AONB. As discussed in the presentation, the scale design and impact reserve matters. However, the density of development is considered to be acceptable and comparable to other developments within Stoborough, and officers are confident that a scheme can be delivered on the site. Looking at the impact on living conditions of the occupiers of neighbouring properties, there are good distances between the neighbouring properties and those shown on the indicative master plan. Obviously, this will be something that officers will consider in the reserve matters application, but again, there's no concern that this can't be achieved. Heathlands mitigation I've addressed already. A biodiversity mitigation plan has been prepared that the natural environment team have agreed to, and so therefore we're satisfied that any biodiversity interests are suitably protected. As I've already mentioned, an appropriate assessment has been undertaken in relation to Poole Harbour recreational SPD and nitrates and phosphates to ensure that the development doesn't have a negative impact on Poole Harbour. Flood risk and drainage I've explained, so subject to a further flood risk assessment that's acceptable and subject to conditions relating to the drainage. Protected trees, again, I've discussed this, considered acceptable subject to the submission of an arboricultural method statement. So all significant planning matters are considered to have been appropriately or adequately addressed. So officers therefore recommend that permission is granted subject to the conditions and a completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to provide affordable housing provision of 7 dwellings plus a financial contribution of £82,500. If that doesn't happen, the recommendation is to refuse permission if the Section 106 legal agreement is not signed within 6 months of the date of the committee, unless such extended time is agreed by the head of planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was quite a long stint for you. I'm now going to move on to the public speakers. I do not have any members of the public who wish to speak. However, I do have the applicant's agent wishing to speak. So Chelsea, can you take us through the representation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors. The application has been made by the trustees of the Stoborough settlement, who are part of the Rumstone estate. The estate is located in the Purbeck, and its business interests include renting and managing a large number of residential, commercial and agricultural properties in the Wareham area to over 100 local people. The estate has submitted this plan application in order to increase the supply of housing available to local people, and it wishes to retain the ownership of and manage the 7 affordable housing units in perpetuity. It is exactly 5 years since the estate first held discussions with Arm Parish Council and Purbeck District Council officers about the potential of this site to accommodate housing for local people. The application before you today is the culmination of 5 years of discussions, design iteration and assessment, and we are pleased that it is recommended for approval. As highlighted in the officer report, the application accords with the policies of the Arm Parish Neighbourhood Plan, which was made by Dorset Council just last month following 93% public support in the May 2021 referendum. The proposed development will deliver 15 badly needed homes in the Purbecks of a range of sizes, with 7 affordable housing units being provided for rent. The application site does not flood and is not predicted to flood in the future. All the proposed houses will have a decent sized garden and parking, and a footway is to be provided, linking the development site to the primary school and village centre. The proposed development connects to an existing sang via an existing public footpath. It will deliver ecological mitigation measures and biodiversity net gain, and will not give rise to any unnecessary light pollution, overlooking or loss of privacy for adjoining residents. Whilst the application accords with the neighbourhood plan, it also accords with the small sites policy, policy H8 of the Advanced Purbeck Local Plan, and is specifically identified within Appendix 2 of this plan as a small development site that Dorset Council wishes to see come forward for housing in the Purbeck area. The development of this unconstrained site provides an excellent opportunity to deliver badly needed housing for local people in the Purbeck, in accordance with very recent adopted development plan policies. There are no substantive objections to the application from the Environment Agency, Natural England, the Dorset AONB Partnership or Dorset Council Highways, and we ask that you endorse the recommendation to approve before you today. If you do, the estate looks forward to working further with council officers and stakeholders to deliver a small but sustainable development of the very highest quality. Thank you. That's the only comment we've received for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have both local members have been notified, but I understand that Ryan Holloway is with us this morning. Good morning, Ryan. You wish to speak to this application?
Good morning, Madam Chairman, and first of all, thank you for everyone for allowing me to speak regarding this application. I will try and keep everything fairly short and sweet because, as you've heard, obviously from the officer about the site. First of all, Councillor Izzard does send her apologies for not attending. Unfortunately, she's had to attend another meeting this morning, so she has asked me to come to this committee on behalf of herself and obviously myself as well. So the reason why the local members, as we state, that we do not support the application is that we are concerned about the lack of affordability of the housing. We're also quite concerned about the local infrastructure of Stover, because Stover is not a large town. It's still quite a fairly small village as well. We are also concerned about obviously about the pedestrian link to the village, and also about some of the lack of school provision as well. We're also a bit concerned about the school provision, because we know that road that links from where the proposed development is, that does tend to get quite busy. That does, with school drop-offs, and I know that traffic can be quite bad up through that lane. I'm also concerned about the impact of is on the area of outstanding of natural beauty. The flood risk as well. Now I believe now, as the officer said, there is going to be another assessment for that, but both myself and Councillor Izzard do have reservations about the risk of flooding, because it does sort of back on to the River Frome up through there, and those particularly on the back there, that has been known to severely flood when there has been obviously torrential rainfall. We're also just concerned as well that with the local neighbourhood plan as well, which the local Arne Parish Council has put in a lot of effort and work, it still does not come into that local neighbourhood plan. They obviously, as you know, Madam Chair, they have quite concerns about the development of the site, and also really we're also concerned about some of the local carbon footprint of the construction of the process as well. So I shall leave that there, but as I said, you know, this is the reason why both myself and Councillor Izzard feel strongly that this should not be supported. So I will leave that there. Thank you for letting me speak, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being so precise. It makes it a lot easier when you have a lot of points to get across as well. So we have no more public speakers. Can I ask officers if there's anything they wish to respond to from the public speaking?
Madam Chairman, Kim Cowell here. Thank you very much to the councillor for raising those points. There are a couple of points that I think we'd like to come back on just briefly to remind officers. The planning application followed discussion with our housing team, who've confirmed that the mix and the delivery of housing are acceptable in this location and reflect local need. The with regard to the school, in the concerns about the school, the neighbourhood plan, as you're aware from Peter's presentation, allows for schemes of up to 15. So this is compliant to that, and these issues have been taken into account as part of the preparations for the development plans that are prevalent and to which officers work. And therefore a scheme of this size is consistent with what's been accepted within that document for delivery of housing within the settlement. With regard to flood risk, Peter explained to you the Environment Agency's mapping information, and that the scheme, albeit in outline, has followed dialogue with the Environment Agency, and conditions are recommended to ensure that moving forward the Environment Agency's mapping data, etc., and flooding is taken into account. And the in relation to construction, clearly this is a matter for building control. Any construction on site needs to be compliant with standards for constructing new development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kim. I have two speakers. The first one is Alex Brenton, and then I will go over to Bill Trite. Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. This is an interesting one. I know Stowborough well. I drive through it regularly. I have occasionally walked my dog on the bog lane, Sang, so I know the area. And although I've gone through the bit that first raised my hackles was this issue of flooding, bearing in mind that Stowborough is often cut off from Wareham across the causeway by the water meadows backing up when we've had rain and high tides. So it has become a bit of a joke that you know, Stowborough is isolated from Wareham, even though they're a mile apart. I've gone through the flood report and I can see that this banking up to make this sort of platform may help the new development if it happens and preserve that, though admittedly in the details it says 1 in 200 year flood. Well, we've been having 1 in 100 year floods every couple of years lately, so there's no guarantee that we may have to wait 200 years. These houses will have fallen down by then anyway. But I am concerned that everything that causes sort of impervious surfaces around the edge of the floodplain is actually just going to push the water somewhere else. So I can imagine the new development won't flood, but possibly Hollow Oak might. So I am concerned about that. If you actually look at the magic map of soils of Dorset, it does state that this area is always wet, heavy, clayish before you get onto the heath further in. So that I can sort of, I would like to see the next flood appraisal when it's done. I'm pleased to see there's a condition about second homes, so I always wonder how on earth is that going to be policed? Is there any evidence of how that can be managed, and what is to stop somebody buying it genuinely as a local and then selling it on as a second home, which is what often happens. But I think and as somebody who drives past this area or through this area quite regularly, I do tend to think that this is actually, despite the flood risk, a very sensible place to build houses. Stowborough is constrained by heathland very largely, and if not this site, most of the other sites would be to the east or to the south, and they would be onto heathland. So there's very limited sites that they could use as an alternative. So if the neighbourhood plan accepts the need occasionally for small sites of up to 15 houses, this is one of those that is feasible. But my biggest problem is this element of neighbourhood democracy. The neighbourhood plan was accepted really not very long ago, a month or three, and that should have priority over the Purbeck plan. Fair enough. But reading through the neighbourhood plan, it does seem as though the objections to this site in particular, in development in West Lane, is down to the foreseen number of neighbourhood objections. And you have that problem of you're always going to get neighbourhood objections. So is it better for a village to have an acceptable small development and annoy 35 people? Or is it better for the 35 people to rule the future of the village? And that one, I am still slightly divided in my head about. What weight do we put on people who have bothered to go onto a website and lodge a complaint? And so I'm still not convinced one way or the other. Please convince me. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very balanced input. Bill Trite, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just a brief question at this stage, seeking clarification. On page 39 of the report, reference the neighbourhood plan, there's further reference to our old friend, the housing delivery test, the all-purpose Purbeck development justifier. And that is said to be in respect of results for the Isle of Purbeck. Now, does that actually mean the Isle of Purbeck, or does it mean the former Purbeck District Council area? Because the Isle of Purbeck is only about half of the former Purbeck District Council area. I thought the housing delivery test referred to the whole of the former Purbeck area, but the report here clearly states the Isle of Purbeck. So could some officer please clarify that for me?
Who's going to take that one?
Thank you. Can I come back, Councillor Coombs? Oh, sorry, Kim. Yes. In response to Councillor Trite's point, it refers to the former Purbeck District Council area, and I apologise if there's any confusion in the report there. May I respond to some of Councillor Brenton's points?
I have no further speakers at the moment, so yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. We have I have discussed the flooding potential in the presentation, just to make clear again that the Environment Agency existing mapping does not show the site flooding, and indeed I've worked in Wareham for a long time and I'm not aware of this particular site having flooded. Obviously the floodplains further to the north absolutely do, and the causeway does cut off, as Councillor Brenton has pointed out, but there's no, the Environment Agency have raised no concerns per se, but they have opted for a belt and braces approach, so they would like to see a further flood risk assessment submitted if the outline application is approved, and that just ensures it takes account of any uplift in the figures in terms of flood risk. But they have confirmed to me that they do not consider that this site will enter into flood risk zone 2 and 3. Picking up on Councillor Brenton's point about this site not flooding but others then going on to flood, it is a requirement of the regulations that we do not make the situation worse on another site. There are conditions relating to the dispersal of surface water on the site, and so that it's anticipated and expected that those conditions would ensure that we don't end up with a situation where the residents of Hollow Oak Road end up flooding while this site doesn't. What the other points? So in terms of the neighbourhood plan, yeah, I think we are giving the neighbourhood plan the priority because that is the most recently approved adopted development plan. The preamble doesn't state how many objections there actually were to this, so we have no way of knowing for certain. But what is clear is that the policy, that the neighbourhood plan does not allocate specific sites for development, and therefore it relies on this policy instead of using small sites for housing need, and for the reasons that I've gone through in the presentation, officers do consider that it meets the requirements of that policy. Finally, on the second homes element, that's gone through the examination process and with the neighbourhood plan, and the inspector's obviously been happy with that, so it is considered appropriate that we would look to apply that condition if members were minded to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have another speaker, and that's David Took.
Thank you, Chair. For clarity, I noticed, well, first of all, the neighbourhood plans in my mind are important and should, of course, be given very significant weight, especially those which are less than a couple of years old, which, of course, this is. The Arn neighbourhood plan says that a maximum of 15 is a small site, and I noticed that this is precisely 15. It also says that you're not allowed to create subsequent small sites that will eventually and cumulatively make that site a larger site. So one of my concerns was the land in the ownership of the applicant. So I'd like some clarity that that bit of the neighbourhood plan would not allow that other land to be developed. And I don't know if this is possible to make a condition on this, or to make it clear that that section of the Arn neighbourhood plan will be enforced, will be relevant. It might not affect this application, but I think we need to be clear somewhere that further development to the top end of the bottom end of the site, as it is, would not be permitted. I'd also be happier in terms of a exception site if the 8:7 ratio of commercial to affordable was actually reversed. And I noticed that Mr. Walters went through that, but I'm not sure if the value that is being placed on one additional affordable house would make a significant difference to the viability. So could we look at that as well, please? Thank you.
Okay, there's a couple of important points there. Pete, do you want to come back and respond to those, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so that Councillor Took's quite right about the Arn neighbourhood plan talking about not wanting to see additional development over and above on the same small site, but we would have to consider if an application was submitted, that would form part of the assessment. The Arn neighbourhood plan is the development plan, or part of the development plan, sorry, for Arn Parish. So if a further application came in at another time, then that would be something that would have to be considered and assessed against the Arn neighbourhood plan at that time. And so we have to take each application on its merits. Just to clarify the point about the rural exceptions policy, although originally this application was to be assessed against that policy, officers do not consider that it is compliant because the ratio of affordable to open market in terms of physical housing on site is 47% affordable and 53% open market. There is a commuter sum to be paid as well that would effectively, in terms of values, bring that to a 50-50 split. But officers considered that because of the amount of open market housing proposed, that this couldn't be considered to be a rural exception site. And so if it weren't for the Arn neighbourhood plan, it would, we would be making a different assessment. But because the Our Neighbourhood Plan has been adopted and has this policy in place, a small sites policy, considering the scheme against the Our Neighbourhood Plan, which we need to do because it's now part of the development plan, we officers consider that it's compliant with that. So this would, if members were minded to approve this, it wouldn't be as a rural exception site, it would be as a small site, but with a provision of 47% affordable housing on site plus a commuted sum. I hope that clarifies matters slightly.
Thank you. Can I just clarify, if it wasn't for the Our Neighbourhood Plan, would a development outside the envelope be permitted under the current local plan unless it were a rural exception site?
Peter, do you want me to come back on that point? Chairman, if I may, getting my words mixed up there. If I may just add, before I answer that question, if I may just add to what Peter said earlier. Members, we've got a duty to determine the application that's before us, not what somebody might do later on. Councillor Tuck's concerns, I wholly take on board. And as Peter said, that is something that would need to be judged against the local plan should that happen at some future date. But at the moment, we've got a duty to consider the proposal that's on the table. With regard to the development in Stowborough, were it not for the Our Neighbourhood Plan, members are mindful of the housing delivery position in Purbeck. We previously discussed that at earlier committees, where because of the failure to deliver housing, and given the age of the Purbeck Local Plan Part 1, then were it not for this local plan and the development policies, then there's that fallback whereby, because of the housing delivery, any site can come forward. Clearly, because you're in the A and B here, there are constraints that come to bear that might not elsewhere. But the Our Neighbourhood Plan is the policy basis against which we are judging this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. I think if you want to pursue your first comment, David, maybe have a conversation with officers outside of the meeting. I'm sure they will be happy to talk through some of the implications of that sort of scenario.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Although they're not relevant to this one.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, I have two more speakers. The next one is Mike Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the case officer, I think this is a question for, is the applicant comfortable or acceptant of the principal home condition? And I ask because this is a relatively new one, and conditions, of course, are usually appealable. So just as out of interest, could I have the answers to that, please?
Thank you. Yeah, all the conditions that are proposed have been discussed with the planning agent, and he is aware of them and will have liaised with the applicant, and they've raised no concerns at this time about them.
Okay, thank you for that.
Lovely. And Shane Bartlett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to the officer for a really good report and an excellent presentation, which is very comprehensive. I've just got a question surrounding the table that's on page 28 under part 6 of the report, where we talk about the number of affordable units and the number of open market units. And it really it's a comment. I don't know whether the officers have an answer, but time and again we've seen these planning applications come before us. And it appears to me that in terms of the affordable units, we rarely get anything in the way of number of units or dwellings that would be of multiple bedrooms. And we know that we're living in a county where we lose young families and children out of this county at quite a frightening rate because of their inability to be able to get onto the housing market here or to get adequate accommodation so they can actually stay within the county. And I am a little bit disappointed that it's only going to provide 1 3-bedroom detached house. And I would just like some clarification in terms of from the officers how we actually go about calculating that with the discussion with the developers.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. The developer has submitted an affordable housing scheme as they felt would be appropriate, and the senior housing needs officer has looked at that and looked against the need within the local area, and the senior housing needs officer has advised me that the provision of affordable housing as proposed would meet a local required need, and so as an officer, you know, if I've got the senior housing needs officer advising me that this is meeting a local need, while I fully appreciate the point you're making, we officers do consider, because of the response that I've had from the housing needs team, that the affordable housing quota is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chairman, may I continue?
With pleasure.
Okay, there's nobody else requesting to speak at the moment. So as I say, great thanks to the officer for the report, very comprehensive presentation that was given. There's various aspects of it in terms of this plan application that I think that the sang that's on the site, close to the site, sorry, I think was within a reasonable distance for allowing the site to come forward in terms of those future residents being able to access the sang. I think it's a huge improvement for the village with the pavement provision, and certainly will provide a safe route into school. It's going to give a much more safer walking experience within the village for the residents that are in the village. It's obviously we're in a situation where Purbeck does need the additional housing, it has fallen below the housing provision that it is supposed to be delivering, and that isn't a good place for us to be in. So I think in terms of the application that's in front of us, Madam Chairman, I'm perfectly happy to propose the application that's in front of us, and as I say, yeah, happy to propose that.
Okay, thank you. So that is a proposal to grant, and that will be a minded decision to delegate to Head of Planning to grant permission subject to the completion of a legal agreement under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 as amended, in a form to be agreed by the Legal Services Manager to secure the following: affordable housing provision of 7 dwellings in accordance with the mix set out above in the report, plus the financial contribution of 82,500, or to delegate to the Head of Planning to refuse permission if the legal agreement under Section 106 is not completed within 6 months from the date of the committee, or such extended time as agreed by the Head of Planning. Just to confirm, that's what you're proposing?
It is, Madam Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll be seconding that, Madam Chairman.
Lovely, thank you, Mike Barron. Broken your duck already. Okay. The application has been, I've just been given a clarification on the wording of that. The legal sign-off will be agreed by the Head of Legal Services, not the Legal Services Manager. So that's a typo in the agenda. So we will make that clarification. Thank you for the note. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. So if there are no other speakers, I will now go through the roll call for the vote. Okay, so Shane Bartlett.
I have heard the presentation given by the officer and the debate, and I understand the application before us, and I vote to approve, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mike Barron.
Vote to approve, Madam Chairman.
And can you confirm that you've heard the whole of the presentation?
I have.
Thank you. Alex Brenton.
I've heard the whole of the presentation and participated. I'm still very torn, but I think I am going to vote against at this point.
That's fine, thank you. Robin Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened to the full presentation and debate, and I am minded to approve.
Thank you. Mike Dyer?
Been present throughout, heard everything and vote to approve, Chairman.
Thank you. Barry Gorringe?
Present throughout, Madam Chairman. I've heard everything, and I go for approval.
Thank you. David Morgan?
I've heard the entire presentation, Madam Chairman, and I'm minded to vote for.
Thank you. Judy Robinson?
I've listened to the entire presentation and I'm voting approval.
Thank you. David Took?
I've listened to the entire presentation. I've taken part in the discussion. I think, marginally minded to vote for the approval.
Okay, thank you. Bill Trite?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened to everything this morning and I've read everything available and I'm voting against this proposal.
Okay, thank you. And John Worth?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've listened to the whole of the presentation and I'm minded to approve.
Thank you. Okay, so before I jump to a conclusion, David Northover, can you give me the outcome of the vote, please?
I certainly can. It's 9 for, 2 against.
Okay, in that case, the application is a minded to grant from the committee as set out, and I will now go over to Anna Lee as the appropriate officer to deal with the delegation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I confirm that I have heard the presentation and the debate, and I'm not aware of any reason to differ from the committee's minded to resolution. So this application will be taken forward as per the committee's minded to resolution. This means the application will be approved subject to completion of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, I shall now move on to our item number 7, and that is the proposed traffic regulation order, weighted restrictions on Pony Drive, Upton. And I believe Patrick Carpenter and Mike Potter are going to take us through this one.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just share my screen. Okay. Again, thank you, Madam Chairman. The proposed parking restriction in Pony Drive, Upton, has undertaken primary and public consultation. It has support from local members, Town Council and Dorset Police. Due to the significant number of public responses during the public consultation, the proposal is being presented to the committee to consider. The full details, including the background to the request, the original proposal and the process undertaken, are included in the committee report supplied to all members. I will happily take any questions at the end of the presentation. The image shown is an aerial view of the surrounding area of Pony Drive. Highlighted in green is Pony Drive itself. Highlighted in black is Upton Country Pay and Display Car Park. Highlighted in blue is Upton Country Park Free Car Park. And highlighted in orange is Factory Road, which has industrial units and businesses. Pony Drive has approximately 129 properties. There is a free car park opposite that is believed to be used for predominantly walkers using Upton Country Park. It has the car park has approximately 28 parking spaces. There is a pay and display car park approximately 500 metres from Pony Drive, which has approximately 400 parking spaces. Both these car parks are managed by BCP Council. The presentation which I will give will be presented in 4 sections. The proposal. Number 2, the issues that identify Pony Drive as needing parking restrictions. Number 3, the local alternatives for parking. And number 4, the conclusion and recommendation. On screen is the plan for the initial proposal of double yellow lines along certain sections of Pony Drive. This would be a 24-hour, 7 days a week restriction. The request for a double yellow line was made initially by the Town Council with support from a local member and on behalf of requests from residents. We received supportive primary consultation responses from the Town Council, local Dorset councillors and Dorset Police. The proposal was advertised for public consultation on the 25th of February 2021. This included site notices and information regarding the proposal was available on the council website. Identified issues. The proposal was requested to address the concerns of potentially dangerous and obstructive parking on Pony Drive. The Community Highways team leader accompanied and consulted with a local member and town council representatives on various occasions to assess and picture the reported issues. The next slides are pictures taken and received from individuals on different days by the Community Highways team, the local member or town council. The pictures on the left show a view from Poole Road into Pony Drive on different days. The parking here is causing visibility issues to Poole Road, emerging and entering into Pony Drive. There have also been reports of vehicles parking on both sides of Pony Drive, completely blocking some access, causing possible danger and potentially causing a significant issue when an emergency vehicle is requiring to access the road. The pictures show a view from Pony Drive looking to Poole Road. The same issues as previously mentioned of visibility and possible safety issues can be seen in the pictures. Local alternatives. The local parking off-street alternatives for visitors to the area are Upton House Country Park and the free car park opposite Pony Drive. The pictures on the left show areas of Upton Country Park main pay and display car park. On the day these photos were taken, there was a substantial amount of parking still available. The car park has approximately 400 parking spaces and is approximately 500 metres from Pony Drive. The pictures on the right are aerial views of the whole car park. It is split into two, those pictures, so there's the main bit, there's the other part of the car park. On screen is the car park tariff for Upton Country Park pay and display car park. The cost for an annual pass for the car park equates to less than 12 pence a day. As previously highlighted, the car park is managed by BCP Council. The picture shows an aerial view of Upton Country Park short stay car park. There is no charge for this car park. It is approximately 20 metres from Pony Drive and has 28 free parking spaces. There is Pony Drive, there's the free car park. On the day this photo was taken, there were still available parking spaces. As previously highlighted, this car park is also managed by BCP Council. Conclusion and recommendation. The graph in view shows the objections we received for the proposal by reason and origin. The main objection raised through the public consultation is shown as reason 1 on the graph. The main objection raised was residents, visitors to residents, and visitors to the area will be unable to park. Considering this feedback from the public consultation, officers propose an alternative proposal of having the restriction between daylight peak hours only between 9 AM and 5 PM. On screen is the revised proposal. The proposal extent of the restriction was exactly the same as the proposed double yellow line restriction. The proposed single yellow line restriction between 9 AM and 5 PM could enable residents and visitors parking options if required between the hours of 5 PM until 9 AM, thus addressing concerns raised about safety and providing opportunity to park on the highway if required by visitors and residents. It is understood that parking on Pony Drive is less obstructive after 5 PM. However, this would leave the identified dangerous areas exposed for parking when the restriction ends. The revised proposal was sent to local members and the Town Council for consideration. The Town Council and a local member confirmed their decision was to continue to support the original double yellow line proposal and not the revised single yellow line proposal. On screen is the original proposal of double yellow lines. The implementation of yellow lines will help encourage no parking opposite or around major junctions on Pony Drive. It will increase visibility when emerging from or entering Pony Drive and reduce conflict between vehicles travelling in opposite directions. It will also provide clear access for emergency services. The extent of the proposed yellow line restriction leaves a reasonable amount of off-street parking provision for residents and visitors. The nature and layout of the roads not covered by the proposed formal parking restrictions would not likely attract visitor parking to the same extent as is currently experienced on Pony Drive. The suitable and nearby alternatives would likely be seen as more practical and appropriate options. Having considered all the responses received to the initial double yellow line proposal and the alternative single yellow line proposal, officers conclude that both proposals have equally balanced advantages and disadvantages. As a result, officers consider it appropriate to recommend proceeding with the proposal of the double yellow line restriction as originally supported by the Town Council and Dorset Council ward members, rather than leaving the situation as existing. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. I will take any questions if needed.
Thank you. Before we go into questions, I'm going to take the public representations. So Chelsea, over to you. You've got a bit of a handful today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first comment is from Tracy Singh. I'd like to provide a written statement against the proposed traffic regulation order. My name is Tracy Singh. I live just off Pony Drive with my 2 small daughters and husband. The reason that I am against the order is there doesn't seem to have been any consideration for the other smaller roads off Pony Drive, i.e. Bridle Close, Martingale Close. These roads also have no parking restrictions. I believe putting yellow lines down Pony Drive will mean the other small roads will see parking for Upton Country Park move to these and make the problem worse and dangerous for residents. This will leave little space for emergency vehicles to get through, as well as residents trying to get to their properties. Also, lots of children play out in these roads, including my own, and will be in an accident waiting to happen if traffic increases. If Pony Drive is to be yellow lined, that something needs to be done at the same time for these roads, i.e. yellow lines or resident only park restrictions. Please can this statement be used in the upcoming meeting? I've attached some images of parking in Bridle Close earlier this year. The next comment is from Jan Chappell. I'm writing in to support the order for Pony Drive. We've been residents here for a number of years with no problems until the dog walkers car park was opened and charges were brought in for the country park, which incidentally I can understand for the upkeep. We are constantly being bombarded with cars, making this a safety issue. We have lots of children living here now and 4 people who have mobility scooters, which is making it difficult for them to negotiate the pass because of motorists blocking the pavements and drop curbs. Cars are parking right up to the junction leading to the main road, making it very dangerous to exit. We have had 2 near misses with cars coming in as you have to drive on the wrong side of the road. Cars are constantly reversing and doing U-turns and the fumes are awful at times. Another safety issue is for the fire service unable to get through in an emergency because there is often not enough of a gap. The next comment is from Jamie Dunn. I've been one of the main residents of Pony Drive in Upton who has been campaigning for some time for restrictions to be placed. Lines, ideally double yellows, need to be placed without question at the top of Pony Drive on both sides of the road, as both can be used for parking by individuals to avoid paying BCP parking charges at Upton Country Park and proposes a huge danger. The road is in need of some form of restrictions now being placed, mainly for safety for residents and their visitors. This has been heightened since Upton Country Park opened their smaller additional dog walkers car park opposite Pony Drive. Upon entering Pony Drive / approaching Pool Road from Pony Drive, one half of the road is usually full of parked cars that are mostly users of Upton Country Park who do not wish to pay the charges placed by BCP Council, understandably as they are ridiculously high for what used to be a free car park. And I've been raising this with BCP separately. These cars cause a major hazard as whichever way a car is heading, it ends up being head-on with others in the opposite direction, thus causing potential road traffic accidents. Cars even park illegally to the point where they are parking on the junction to Pool Road itself. How there has not been a road traffic accident at this junction to this point is amazing. The plans drawn for the consultation show double yellow lines from the top of Pony Drive down to the grass verge opposite Stirrup Close, which I and other residents would still support as the amount of people using the road causes to go as far as this point. To that end, if this is not agreed, then residents will have to accept that, but the double yellows on both sides of the approach to Pool Road is an absolute must in many opinions covering safety. To add to this, Pony Drive and its surrounding roads, Bridle Close, Martingale Close and Stirrup Close, now hold more families and young children than it has ever done before since my family and I moved here in 2009. This should be taken into consideration for the amount of negligent parking and high speed seen, with visitors who may only be using to access Upton Country Park and are not familiar with our roads. Many of these children mentioned above play out in these surrounding roads, which if Pony Drive is full, then spills over into these smaller side roads. I've attached evidence within the zip folder of photos taken by myself over many months of how ridiculously busy the road gets, including one video taken on a Saturday within the last year that shows cars parked from the entrance of Pony Drive down to Stirrup Close and the trouble it therefore caused. This, unfortunately, is a regular occurrence. Lastly, it's extremely important for me to add that the vast majority of the objectors under the consultation period were actually people who are not connected to Pony Drive or even the Upton area. They're in fact friends of some residents from down the bottom of Pony Drive who lived elsewhere but were given links to the consultation to add their responses. You'll find that the vast majority of people locally very much welcome the proposed TRO, but were unaware of how to access the consultation due to mostly being online. I additionally raised this point over the last few weeks to your colleagues in the TRO/Highways Department. That's all the comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll just add that due to our public speaking protocol that we don't allow photographs or videos, which is why, although they have been mentioned in the deputation, they've not been played to members. However, officers will have seen them. Okay, we have 2 local members. Alex Brenton is part of the committee. Alex, do you wish to speak now as local member or as part of the committee? The choice is yours.
I'll speak as part of the committee. Let Bill Councillor Pipe speak as ward member.
Okay, that's fine. In that case, I will go straight over to Councillor Bill Pipe, the other local member for the area. Morning, Bill.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Good morning, members. And thank you for inviting me to speak. I speak today as one of the ward members and as a member of Litchfield Minster and Upton Town Council, which supports the introduction of the TRO, as does Dorset Police. Over a period of years since the introduction of parking charges at Upton Country Park, the majority of which, but not all of, falls within BCP jurisdiction, cars and vans and even lorries have taken to parking on Pony Drive on both sides of the road, leaving no access through the middle by anything larger than a moped. Residents have rightly demanded of their town council an end to this indiscriminate and dangerous parking. During the consultation period, it was noted that more people were against the double yellow lines than were actually for them. But on closer inspection, Madam Chairman, the vast majority of the objectors had no connection to Pony Drive or other local roads off of Pony Drive, but gave addresses scattered across Poole, i.e. these are users of cars parked on Pony Drive from outside of the Dorset Council area. I believe that the committee should support the TRO before you today and allow the introduction of double yellow lines to enable access and egress from Pony Drive and to give the hard-pressed residents their road back. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, the third local member, Andrew Starr, has not asked to speak this morning. So, members, Alex, as first member of the committee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I don't actually live in Upton, so when I do go, and I do go quite regularly down to Upton Country Park to walk the dog, I do use the free car park. And a year or so ago, there was no problem at all. But it does seem that the mass sort of going out for your daily walk has really brought this problem to a head. You now have the car park used, very full with dog walkers. Anybody else does park over the road, and Pony Drive can get completely gridlocked. And bearing in mind that Dorchester Road, which is the main drag through, is very busy with work traffic a lot of the time, you can get the whole road just freezes up. So something has to be done. And when this first came forward, I personally believed that you needed double yellow lines at the first, at the entrance to Pony Drive, but perhaps not as far as is suggested. Then I thought a lot about the single yellow lines, but if it's 9 till 5, and we suspect a lot of the people parking on Pony Drive are actually using it as parking for the day because they work in Factory Road. So 9 might not make any difference at all. And with shift work, you may still have some people who would park there longer. So it might be much simpler just to go for double yellow lines, and there is no argument with them. If you have overnight parking, yes, you might get used by a few late night dog walkers, but by then the Upton Country Park car park is empty. So despite my instinctive dislike of double yellow lines, in this particular case, I am for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you going to propose the recommendation then, Alex?
Yes, I would be happy to propose this recommendation.
Okay, so that is for the double yellow line scheme as proposed by the officers. Shane, you wish to speak? Do you wish to second?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, I don't at this time. I'd like to ask a question of the officers. Okay. Thank you for the report. Again, another excellent report by the officers and presentation. I'd just like to a bit more clarification about Martingale Close, Bridle Close and Stirrup Close, as to why there's a thought that the parking wouldn't move into those areas. Because if we were to double yellow line Pony Drive, looking at the map, I would imagine that the parking would actually move into those areas.
I'm happy to take that one, Councillor Bartlett. One of the reasons that we would that we believe that it wouldn't be nearly as intense as it is on Pony Drive is because of the drop curb accesses that are throughout most of the side roads there. So people wouldn't actively choose to park, as they would be most likely either blocking people's driveways. So I believe the reason that people are parking on Pony Drive, in some ways ironically, is that they don't believe that they are causing an immediate obstruction to residents locally, whereas if they were to venture away from Pony Drive and the side roads further down, they would realise that parking there would be more apparently inappropriate. So most people would not choose to park on those side roads and would likely choose the suitable alternatives, such as if they are to use Upton Country Park, they will prefer to use the availability of the pay and display car park or the nearby free car park. So that's the reasoning behind not extending the restrictions too far. We don't want to regulate parking absolutely everywhere, because we recognise the inconvenience that can create for people immediately in the area. So we would prefer to address the issues where it is most most pertinent to do so.
Okay, thank you. Can I come back, Madam Chairman?
Of course.
Yeah, I do. I've got some concern about if we were to double yellow line this, that we would actually just move the problem onto somewhere else. I know the area a little bit. I don't know it fantastically well, but I do know the area a little bit. And Councillor Brenton hit upon something that was a concern to me, that potentially some of this parking may well be from people that are working within the area. And I do know that on particularly on industrial estates now, and on Factory Road, that often there isn't the sufficient parking provision that's given now on these types of industrial estates, and on often as not on working premises. We see that there isn't sufficient parking provision for the amount of people that are working on the premises. And so I did consider as to whether some of this was all-day parking from workers within the area, and I just wonder whether the officers had a view on that or not.
Yeah, again, I'll happily take that. Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Now, one of the reasons we can't be absolutely certain, because we don't survey the people that park there on their reasonings for parking there. However, I think there's quite a correlation between what has been mentioned in some of the statements that have been provided today, and with discussions that we've had with reps from the town council and the local ward members, that this situation has become exaggerated more in recent years since either the opening of the free car park, and certainly correlated with the charging that was introduced at Upton Country Park, which would suggest that a lot of the impact or the demand for parking there is more for leisure purposes than it would be solely people associated with employment areas. That it may well be used by people from those employment areas, but as with any situation, we would continue to monitor the impact and make sure that there aren't problems being created elsewhere as a result. If there are, then we would look to address those in a reasonable way. But it's very difficult to actually assess, short of putting regulation in absolutely everywhere. It's very difficult to assess exactly what the impact would be. But we believe the proposal is addressing the most pertinent issue and situation in this location.
Okay, thank you. I'm not wholly convinced by proposals on the table, Madam Chairman, but I'll give way to other speakers now, and I may wish to come back. Thank you.
Okay. Robin Cook, you're the next speaker, and Alex, can you turn your microphone off, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, my sympathies go out to anybody that's got to deal with trying to control parking issues. And can I also say I admire Michael Potter's optimism about people perhaps not parking further out on the estate and blocking driveways. That seems to be one of the biggest issues that we come across. Shane stole my thunder in a way, because he got in just ahead of me, but both he and I live in a town which is plagued by these sort of issues regularly, and it's increased so much over certainly recent years, both with visitors, residents and workers. So I think we're qualified to speak on this. Knowing just how long these regulations take to come into force, some of them take years before they come into effect. I don't really want to stir too much into the pot, but in the light of what we've heard, this is from residents particularly and from members, can we not do a mix and match here? I know it means going back to the drawing board. Can we not, for example, have double, I mean, are we allowed to do this? Double yellow lines for the bit of Pony Drive that looks a bit rural, the beginning part, if you like, and then single yellow for the rest of the area as shown on the plan. And then maybe the rest of the estate, maybe we can single yellow on one side only. This will alleviate the possible double-sided parking, but also when you have some degree of parking in these estates, on-street parking, it does add to the, funnily enough, the safety aspect, because it cuts the speed of traffic down. So there are some pluses there, but I know this is a bit radical suggesting this, because it means the whole thing's got to be swept away and we've got to go back to the drawing board. If that is not feasible, if not considered feasible, maybe we could just consider a revamp and having, as I said initially, part double yellows at the beginning and then single yellows through to the area as shown on the plan. I don't know how officers want to respond to that one. Thank you.
Mike, I'll let you do the honour.
Yes, I'll take that. Thank you, Councillor Cook. It's a valid point, and it's something that I believe was considered in the process when we were reviewing the objections that were raised. My colleague Patrick ran through the alternative proposal that was discussed. That was the one that we fell on in terms of that we felt could be formally reviewed. It wasn't supported by the local town council or local ward members, and for that reason, as well as the equal benefits that there are for the double yellow line restriction throughout in terms of its clarity, which I think Councillor Brenton mentioned earlier in terms of the clarity and the message that it is giving, and saves any confusion from visitors or residents or where people can or cannot park. That's one of the reasonings why we fell on recommending double yellow lines throughout rather than a hybrid setup, which could lead to some confusion. Although there are merits there, it would mean having to go back through, as you've mentioned, Councillor Cook, you've mentioned we would have to go back through, if you like, or as you put it, back to the drawing board and have to begin a period of statutory public consultation again, because the suggestion would be significantly different to what we had initially proposed, and it could lead to additional concerns or objections from those who have otherwise not raised objections to the initial proposal, which, it has to be said, did garner support locally as well, which has been alluded to by statements that have been submitted earlier and by Councillor Pipe as well.
Okay, so are you happy with that answer?
Well, if I can just come back, Madam Chairman, if I may. I understand all that, and thank you very much, Michael, for that clarity. But, you know, my concern is that we've got really one chance to get it right, maybe at this stage, because we don't want to be sitting here in 12 or 18 months' time discussing the merits of further restrictions through the estate. We've got one chance, really, and I understand the issue about going back to the drawing board and time, but that's what I worry about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shane, you wanted to come back.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, and I am conscious of the fact that you do have a proposal on the table at this point, but I would concur with a lot of what Councillor Cook has said. It was his turn to steal my thunder, as it were, and a lot of what he says I share. I certainly think that Junction should be double yellow lined, and I would prefer to see then other areas in Pony Drive given the 9 to 5 restriction, single yellow lines to allow passing points on that road. My concern about double yellow lining it is that you invariably end up moving the problem on somewhere else in the locality, and you don't actually resolve the issue. I've sympathy for both the ward members and for the town and for the local town council. This is their area, and they do know their areas. But as Councillor Cook alluded to, that we do live in a town ourselves that has very similar problems to this, vast problems to this, an ancient historical town that was built in the horse and cart era, and we have a lot of experience of when you start doing traffic, as Mike Potter and his team knows, there is the possibility to actually just move the problem around. It's very difficult. Obviously, these places were built long before the modern motor car was envisaged, and certainly the number of cars that we have on the road today. So in terms of the proposal that's on the table at the moment, I'm not minded to support. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mark Dow, you're my next speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry to disagree with the previous two speakers, but I think that we need to get on and approve the recommendation that's in front of us, because, OK, there are alternatives, but it's by no means certain whether they would work or not. And if you single yellow line one side of the roads that are a little bit further away, you're going to get a whole new set of objections from people who either want or don't want the line to be on their side of the road. And meanwhile, the residents of Pony Drive are going to suffer this problem until we get a scheme in place. So I'm totally in favour of supporting the recommendation as set out. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you like to second the proposal?
Yes, I would. Yes, I'm very happy to do that, and I don't need to add anything to what I've already said. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. And my last speaker is David Took.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a concern about the impact as raised by Councillors Bartlett and Cook on moving the problem elsewhere. I think it might be worthwhile going back to the drawing board. I would suggest it possible to double yellow line the start of the entrance to Pony Drive up to the building line, as it were, and then single yellow line around, possibly further around some of the other areas, but with the provision for residential parking permits that can be given out, not at a charge, but free of charge, I would suggest, to residents, so that residents can park in these ancillary roads, but visitors to the country park would not be able to. And I think that would be worth looking at. So if it's possible to bring forward another application along those lines in the future, I would be minded to for us to refuse this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Mike Potter to come back just on the suggestions of resident permits, and also I think it would be useful to have an idea of the timescales involved if we do decide to go round the whole thing again with a completely new design compared to the timelines for the current proposal.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the point about resident parking schemes, I'm not aware that it would meet with our policy for implementing a resident parking scheme, because there is significant provision for off-street parking. So that would, in that, we wouldn't routinely offer resident parking permit scheme areas in estate roads or residential areas where the majority of people are able to or have access to off-street parking. We would need to go through a fairly lengthy consultation process. We need to ensure that at least if it met criteria for there not being off-street parking available privately, there'd need to be support from at least 60% of residents for the area affected, and there would also be a charge associated with the permit. We are not in a position to be able to offer free parking permits to residents. That's part of our policy and our approach. So that's not something that would be feasible. Sorry, Madam Chair, would you mind reminding me of the second point you wanted me to clarify? Oh, the timescales. In some ways, it can be trying to measure the length of a piece of string because it depends on us getting agreement on what we want to go out to public consultation. But in terms of the statutory process, we'd need to hear from primary consultees, Dorset Police, Town Council, local member, and then there's an advertising period of 21 days, statutory period of 21 days notice, but we need to give a couple of weeks notice from that. So from start to finish, if all things line up, then we'd be looking at 6 to 9 months end to end, but that is on the proviso that we have an agreed scheme to take forward. This is an example where we have had it's taken us a while to agree a scheme going forward, so there's no guarantee that we would be able to agree the if you like for one a hybrid proposal to be set up. It's not clear that there would be local support for that, so we could be almost going around in circles a little bit with that. The point that we've got to today has been the result of a lot of lengthy discussions with town councils, with dealing with residents' concerns and with local members. So we have gone through a fairly lengthy informal consultation point before we go through the required statutory period of consultation. So it is difficult for me to actually put a proper timescale on things, but it has taken us a number of months to get to this point with this particular local situation. So I would expect it to take months rather than weeks for that to continue. And you might see a shadow in the background because I am with it being a school period, it's a bit tricky. Bear with me a moment.
I think that's fine. I'll leave it there for the moment with you, Mike. Alex, you had a quick question, and after that, I think I will close the debate and move to the vote. So, Alex, last question.
Thank you. I just would like to ask the officers if they know how often these sort of schemes are monitored. Is a traffic warden visit every day, once a week, or only when it's flagged up as a problem? My issue is clarity, people understanding what's what. So how often are these schemes monitored once they're in place?
Hello everyone, I'll take that one. Couldn't give specific numbers with we'd have to contact parking services about that, but the areas that are subject to tourist influx would be monitored by parking services. I couldn't give you an exact number though. Thank you.
And just to add to Patrick's comments there, I believe where we are in installing new restrictions where we have got an evidence problem with parking, it is a reasonable request that we can make to parking services that soon after those restrictions are put in place that it would be routinely monitored. Now we're not able to monitor parking restrictions that we have in place as often or as frequently as we would like. However, WL lines are by and large. Now, I can't say by everybody because otherwise we wouldn't need parking enforcement colleagues, but by and large are well respected by people who are frequent or infrequent visitors. So we fully expect the situation to improve and would like to think that there wouldn't be a need for enforcement. However, if contravention of parking restrictions were to continue to a disruptive extent, then requests can be made to parking services for a visit to be made when resources is next available in the area. Unfortunately, I'm not able to give comment on the frequency of those visits, so I can't give a definitive answer. But it's something that will be can be requested and will be responded to according to the availability of resource.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Alex. Okay, so we have a proposal to grant the double yellow line scheme, which has been seconded. So I will go through the roll call. Okay, so Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've heard the presentation and I've heard the debate, and I am voting against the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Mike Barron.
I have heard all the debate and I'm voting for the proposal.
Thank you. Alex Brenton.
I've heard and taken part in the debate and I am voting for the proposal.
Thank you. Robin Cook.
I've heard the full presentation, taken part in the debate, and I'm minded to vote against the proposal.
Okay. Mike Dyer.
Present throughout, heard everything, Chairman, and voting for.
Thank you. Barry Gorringe.
Present throughout, and I'm voting for.
Thank you. David Morgan.
Present throughout, Madam Chairman, and I'm voting for.
Thank you. Judy Robinson.
Present throughout, Madam Chairman, and I'm minded to vote for.
Thank you. David Took.
Been present throughout, Madam Chairman. I am minded to vote for.
Thank you. Bill Trite.
I've listened and read everything, and I am voting in favour.
Thank you. And John Worth.
I've listened to the debate and I'm minded to vote for this.
Thank you very much. David Northover, can I come to you for the outcome of the vote, please?
Yes, Chairman. 4, 9, 2 against.
Okay, so in that case, members are supporting. The recommendation will be to grant to the executive, which is either the portfolio holder or the cabinet, as they make the decisions on TROs, but they need our steer. So thank you for that one. So that will go forward with a positive recommendation. If I then move on to agenda item 8, the planning appeals summary. Officers have got together quite a collection for us this time. We've not had a meeting for 3 months, so you can imagine there's quite a bit of backlog of business. So Kim, over to you, please.
Members, there are quite a few appeals here. I'm happy to go through and provide a summary for each of them, or you can take them as read. Chairman, I'll leave that decision to you. There's a mixed bag. We've got a few appeals allowed and very similar appeals dismissed. It's quite an interesting time with the planning inspectorate at the moment. Things that we'd previously recommended and had approved, refused and had supported an appeal. There have been a few changes. The one place that the inspectorate seemed to remain firm in terms of supporting our recommendations are where it relates to Greenbelt decisions. Although I will draw your attention to one item on the agenda. You can see at Horton Farm, paragraph 3.4, there was a concern, appeal allowed. The recommendation was one for refusal, where there was quite a large car park to support a manege in the Greenbelt, and the inspector acknowledged that it was large, but didn't feel that there were reasons why it would harm openness. It's a disappointing decision because we previously succeeded and defended that argument elsewhere. But most of the decisions we've put forward are for your attention today are mainly dismissed. You'll see also on the agenda that there's one item that's come from the Southern and Western area. Members in the Southern and Western Committee had refused an application in Bothampton where there was concerns about a replacement dwelling, which it was considered would be visually dominating, prominent and out of character with an adverse impact on the conservation area. There was also concern there would appear with bearing when viewed from adjacent streets. It went to public inquiry, and the inspector disagreed on both counts and allowed the appeal, but the council was successful in defending an application for costs. If it's all right with you members, because there's so many, as officers, we're happy for members to take them as read, but unless there's any specific questions, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Do members have any specific questions, or are you happy to take it as read? I think the silence is overwhelming. Thank you very much, Kim. Okay, you'll be pleased to know that agenda item 9, urgent items, there are none. So therefore it remains for me to close the meeting at 11:59, and thank you all very much for your attendance this morning and your contribution. Hopefully see you at the next one.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Chairman.